Hey, welcome everybody to yet another episode of Prop Talk. I'm Chris Call as usual, with Mike Trudel as usual on the other side. We're going solo today. We don't have our tech guy today, so Mikey's wearing both hats.
Yep, like usual.
As usual, exactly. Today in the room we have Scott Buckwald. Hey, Scott, how are you?
As usual.
As usual.
For me.
It's good to have you in.
It's fun to be here. I'm really excited to be here.
I know, it's great. So
really honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you, man. You have a long, prestigious career, so we got a lot to talk about. So you just finished something, right?
Just finished The Old Man with Jeff Bridges.
Right.
And hopefully it's not finished. We just finished season 2. And I know originally it was planned for season 3.
Right.
Which should take me the next 15 years based on how long it's taken us to do the 2 seasons we're doing.
Right. Well, that's fantastic.
How long did it take you to do the 2 seasons, you said?
We are on just 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, you want to break that down for everybody? Because they're like, what the hell?
We started in, what would it be, August of 2019, worked until we started shooting then in August. We started shooting in October, shut down for Christmas, came back up. Then shut down for COVID.
Right.
And we were literally 2 days away from going to Morocco. I had my whole kit. Everything was all palleted and shrink wrapped and ready to go. We got shut down. We come back the following August or September, work for about a month, and Jeff had cancer.
Right.
So we shot whatever we could shoot without Jeff in it. Then we shut down again when we ran out of stuff to film. Came back up when Jeff was ready, which was then the following year. Finished out everything that Jeff was in, and that was season 1.
Right.
Then shut down until we came back for season 2. Did a little bit of season 2 and got shut down because of the strike.
Wow.
And then we came back this past December and started shooting in January, and here I am.
And how many episodes did you do?
Originally we were supposed to do 9 episodes season 1, and we ended up they released season 1 with 7. And then this season we did 8 episodes.
Did you have any kids in the show?
No kids.
I was going to say, because then they got really old and it was like, what?
I did.
Yeah, I know. Aging.
To that, I was doing Dead to Me with Christina Applegate.
Right.
And I was doing that kind of in between. It worked out that it was sandwiching up perfectly with Old Man, and Christina has MS.
Yeah, she got sick too.
And we had gotten shut down equally on that show between her illness and COVID and so on. And we did have 2 kids on that. Right. And there was, when we came back after COVID, the little boy who was about 8 or 9 had a growth spurt, and he went from being, I don't know, 4'8" to 5'2". So what they had to do is, and the scene, when we had to do a return, we see him walking down the hallway. So when the camera had to turn around on him, they had to adjust pictures on the wall. And they had to change furniture levels so it didn't look like all of a sudden he got all bigger.
It's crazy how fast they grow between seasons. You know, when I did Mysterious Benedict Society, from season 1, which we didn't do, to season 2, they just like sprouted.
Right.
And then like Young Sheldon. Have you seen Young Sheldon this season?
Oh yeah.
He's like 6'2" now or something. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. I'm seeing a pattern in the shows that you work on. People just get sick.
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it, man.
It was just so unreal. And the wackiest part about it was how it was timing out perfectly. That one show would go down right as the other was coming back up. So it was able to keep me working whenever there was work.
Yeah.
But
whenever a pit would grow in your stomach, you get the phone call for the next one's coming back. Yeah.
It's always the good people, right? I mean, Christine Applegate and Jeff Bridges are the nicest people in the business.
Loved both of them. I've been really lucky in my career.
Yeah.
There's, when I look back, there's very few people I wish I had never worked with.
Well, I wish I could say that.
And Christina and Jeff were just terrific. And they Jeff being the most recent, he is the reason that I love doing this.
Right.
And at my age now, I have zero interest in retiring. I still have fun doing this.
Nice.
You know, there are times where I'm at work and I'm sitting there, and Jeff and I really hit it off because we like a lot of the same music, and we just seem to bond over a lot of trivia things. And first of all, there's nothing more fun than hanging around the house on a Sunday and all of a sudden my phone rings and I'm getting a video call.
Right.
And it's Jeff and he's like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Sorry to bother you. But, I was sitting here and I'm thinking, when we make the macaroni and cheese, should I be shredding the cheese or like cutting it first?"
Right.
And I'm like, "Jeff, you definitely don't want to cut the cheese."
Whoa, is he asking a prop question or is he literally asking?
No, he's asking a prop question for something that's coming up.
Okay.
But,
like culinary questions.
That's what I mean. It's like, you made some really good mac and cheese once.
The thing was that as I'm talking to him, there's part of me that's 12 years old,
right,
going, "I'm talking to Jeff Bridges on the phone. This is too close."
The Big Lebowski.
Yeah, the Big Lebowski.
And my son, who's now in the film business, has grown up doing this. He's grown up coming to sets from the time he was a baby, and meeting celebrities and this whole environment is just part of his life.
Right.
Where I did not grow up in this business. And as long as I've been doing this, I mean, I've been doing this now 32 years or thereabouts. As long as I've been doing this, it still, I still can't believe I'm doing this.
Right. It's incredible. And we got the cart before the horse. Let's go back to you and getting into business. How did that all happen? Where are you from originally?
From New York.
New York City?
I was born in the city, then grew up upstate, Hudson Valley, Poughkeepsie area.
Oh, okay. I'm from Binghamton.
Not quite far.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
That's good.
Went to school in Boston.
Okay.
And then when I finished school, I moved back to the city and started doing film. And
you went to school for film?
I went to school I went undergrad for history with the idea of going to law school.
We have a lot of that.
I had gotten accepted to 2 law schools.
Wow.
And there's nothing a Jewish mother wants to hear more from her oldest child, who's her son. When I called my mother, I'm like, "Mom, I'm not doing law school." I go, "I'm hearing about PA work and it pays $50 a day.
We're going to showbiz."
Yeah.
And she tried so hard. My parents were always both very supportive once I did it.
Sure.
But I remember my mother going, "Scott, go to law school, get it done, then try film, and you could always have law school to fall back on."
Sure.
And I knew if I had something to fall back on, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So I moved to the city. I got my very first call on Christmas Eve of 1987, and it was for a Madonna movie called Bloodhounds of Broadway.
Wow, I remember that.
And as I'm driving, it's like, "Why do you need a PA on Christmas Eve?" And they go, "Well, we need someone to watch the set. We need a parking PA," which is not a position that's in LA.
Right.
Yeah.
So as I'm driving to the city, because they were shutting down that night to go on hiatus for Christmas. So as I'm driving to the city, I'm hearing on local news how there was this problem on the set of a Madonna movie. The caterer had served tainted chicken.
Oh, no.
And everyone on the set got sick.
Yeah.
And I showed up in Union City, New Jersey, and I am not kidding when I said, as soon as I parked my car and I walked around the corner to the front of the set, it smelled like vomit.
Oh no.
Lord. And you still went in.
And I went in, they were paying me like $50 a day, and all I had to do was sit on the set until the morning when security would arrive and watch it for Christmas. And then I did that. I had never worked a 12-hour day in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was dying.
I'll bet.
And after Christmas, after the New Year, they called me and they asked me if I wanted to be an effects PA.
Oh my God.
And
they're like, "You did a really good job watching this.
Yeah.
You want to work in effects?"
Yeah, and I worked on the effects department and had a
Okay.
great time, and then one job led to the other. And if I
Right.
did my family tree, I could trace my most recent job somehow back to that one.
And was this all non-union, or was it NABIT?
It was
or?
a non-union film.
Well,
Yeah, which one of my first days there, they needed just a regular PA.
right.
So they pulled me from effects because effects wasn't working that day. And I was in the opposite stage, and there was scaffolding up along the side of this building that construction had made. So my job, the second AD gave me my very first walkie,
Nice.
and I had to tell construction and the grips to stop working whenever they were rolling on the adjoining stage.
The best job for a PA.
Yeah, and the scaffolding was easily about 2 or 3 stories high because they had built the outside of a building. And I'm downstairs, and I get over the walkie. All right, rolling sound, hold all work. And I tell the guys up top, and I go, and everybody knew I was the new kid.
Sure.
And I said, okay, they're rolling next door. Stop work. We got 30 seconds into it, and the key grip, this guy whose name was Moses, looks down at me, and he's tapping the side of the scaffolding to get my attention. I look up. He gives me the finger, takes out this huge wrench, throws it in the air, and the wrench goes all the way down to the scaffolding. And the second AD comes out, he goes, "What the hell do you not understand about
locking
it up?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is great. I'm loving this."
Oh my Lord! Wow.
You're like, I got the bug now.
But you know what? I really loved the people I was working with. My first full day on set. It was like something I'd never experienced before. But,
of course.
But PAing in New York is nothing like doing it in LA.
In what way?
The weather is really difficult.
Right.
The conditions are really, really hard. The people are just not as cooperative.
Right.
I was in Times Square on a movie called, it was a Gene Hackman, Dom DeLuise movie. And I can't remember the title right now. And they were shooting a scene where a bus T-bones a station wagon, and we were shooting it in Times Square at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. So Times Square is all tied up, and I have to be I'm a lockup PA. So I'm standing on the corner, and you're not allowed to touch people. You can't put your hand on someone's shoulder to hold them back. So this old man comes hobbling down the street on like 47th Street and Broadway, and he has his cane and everything, and I put my hand in front of him, and I didn't touch him, and I go, "Excuse me, sir, we're shooting right now. If you could just wait a moment, we'll be done in a second." He takes his cane and he goes, "Don't you tell me what to do. This is my city." And he hits me in the shin as hard as he can. And I just remember, okay, this can go 2 ways.
Right.
I could start crying because the tears are in my eyes, or I could utilize this clenched fist and deck this guy.
Oh my God.
Either way, it's going to end my career.
Right.
Luckily, I found a third option, which was to swallow the tears, swallow the scream, and just get past it.
Yeah. Oh my. That's funny. I remember years ago I heard a story from a woman who was a PA on God, what's it called? The John Travolta movie that made him huge.
Grease?
No, before that.
Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, jeez, good God. Anyway, so they're doing the scene, because he was huge from Welcome Back Kotter already, and they're doing the scene in the street where he's walking down the street with the paint cans, right, and the pizza,
right,
doing that whole thing, and they had all the streets blocked off with police horses and whatever, and they had PAs at every one of the corners trying to stop people from taking pictures because every time they saw him, they like pulled their camera out and were taking pictures, and this poor guy was like. He had 2 corners that he had to deal with. So he would be standing on one corner telling people not to take a picture. And in the meantime, on the other corner, they're taking pictures. So he'd have to run over there. And then the other corner would start doing it. And she said that she was, doing her side of the street. And she was worried about him because he was a young PA. He hadn't done it before. And she said, all I know is that at one point I looked over my shoulder and I see him reach out and grabs this guy's camera, take it, and throw it on the ground, and start stomping it with his feet.
Good luck with that. I mean, this was in New York also?
New York City, Manhattan.
I'm really glad I went the PA route.
Yeah.
It gave me an appreciation for every other department. It also, like, day one, a lot of the stuff in New York, because I did a lot of non-union things, at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, there was no such thing really as a production PA. Right. You were a PA. So in the morning, they might say, Scott, you're going to be with the grips today. You're going to be with camera. You're going to be with electric.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I just remember in February in Midtown Manhattan, it's freezing cold out. There's ice and snow on the ground. Yeah. And there I am winding, 1,000 yards of cable.
Right.
Because we shot up and down the street.
Yeah.
And that instantly in my playbook, I was like, okay, working in grip? No. Working in electric? No.
It's so true. I mean, I did the same thing. Came up as a PA, and it's an invaluable experience.
Yeah.
Was there no such thing as grievances back in those days?
Oh, God, no. It's like
it's also
their way or the highway.
Yeah, I mean it's New York.
Right.
It was non-union.
Yep.
Non-union, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And also a lot of my early jobs, I would say easily 50+% of my jobs were music videos.
Yeah.
And music videos would pay $50 a day flat for a PA for a minimum of 18 hours. And what would happen is usually when we started going past the 18-hour mark, the producer would start coming around, and the producer was like, some kid 29, 30 years old, and would hand you $50 and ask you to stay.
Right.
And there were a lot of PAs who were like, screw this, and they would leave and not get paid at all.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I got stiffed a lot in the early days. But I since you mentioned music video, I see on your resume you did a Social Distortion video where you did a gag, a spinning newspaper.
Oh no, that's so weird. That's on my resume. Yes,
damn,
and no.
IMDb.
No, well, yeah, I didn't. I have no idea how that got there. What I did was I did the graphics.
Right.
I made the newspaper.
Yeah.
It was some producer had asked me to make,
see.
and I made the newspaper, and I just did the physical graphics, handed it off to them, and they did the spinning.
I see. But
that's so funny.
Still, that's kind of interesting.
The newspaper.
I mean, how'd you get that gig?
Just some random phone call. Probably somebody I had just worked with who was now producing a music video.
Was that out of New York too?
That was in LA.
Here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was. I would say that was around 94.
Okay.
What brought you here then?
What brought me here? I got really tired of the weather in New York, and even at like 26 years old, I remember thinking to myself, I cannot grow old doing this.
Right.
The weather was just really oppressive, hot in the summer, brutal cold in the winter. Plus, in New York, at the time anyway, there were two kind of films. The biggest movies in the world or the smallest guerrilla filmmaking, of which there were many. The movies, the TV movies of the week, the medium budget movies couldn't afford to film there.
Yeah.
So I found that if I wanted to make a career in props, it was going to be much more possible in Los Angeles, where I could go from doing small movies and work my way up. In New York, it's much more difficult to do that. And to me, LA was the place to be.
Yeah.
Right. So, how'd you get how did you land in props? I mean, what turned you on there?
Excuse me.
No worries.
Doing PA work in New York, props is where I gravitated to. Mm-hmm. I was always very handy. I was always good at model making. I'm a born collector. I'm good at archiving and collecting. As soon as I saw props on day one, I was like, this is where I need to be. And I did a lot of just low budget movies.
Right.
They would say, okay, you're the production designer, prop master, and set decorator. And then as I got on a little bigger, when I got to choose of the three, it was, I'm going to be the prop master.
Right.
I was good with keeping the budget. I was good at breaking down the script. It just really came very natural to me. And I had so much fun doing it right from the beginning. It was like, this is what I was doing when I was 10 years old, playing in the woods with my G.I. Joes, except now I'm making $75 a day doing it.
Yeah. So
$75 a day doing it.
I remember those days, man. And I was, and you were like grateful that you couldn't even believe they were paying you to do it.
Right. And then I had met an effects coordinator, and he had given me advice. He said they hate paying for people, but they never mind paying for stuff. And I started buying stuff. I bought a cargo van. I bought a little smoke machine. Mm-hmm. And I started buying stuff so that my kit fee started making more on a daily basis than I was making.
Right.
And because it was non-union, when I was doing music videos, the prop master was always doing smoke. I had no idea it was an effect. To me, it was a prop.
Yeah, same here.
And it wasn't until I got to LA and I started getting on a little bit bigger films, and they started hiring a full-time effects person. That I stopped doing that.
Yeah, non-union East Coast. It was you had an E-fan and you had a smoker.
Yeah, and you also had you would carry a key to open up the fire hydrant.
Oh yeah, well,
that you were allowed to have.
Right.
It's almost like having the handcuff key that locations would have to work it out because there's no such thing as a water shortage on the East Coast. So when you needed water to wipe down the street, you would have your fire hose. You would connect it to the fire hydrant, and you would open the hydrant.
It's called a Halligan, right? Is that what?
I think so.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that word. And
I was just talking to one of our New York prop masters earlier today about because we have the award show coming up in September, the first prop award show. which good little time to plug it right there. Yeah, so go submit. Submissions closed June 10th. But he was asking about it because he's a New York prop master. So he was like, oh, when I submit my material, because everyone's got to submit their props and pictures and PDFs and stuff, he's like, is it cool if I submit cars? Because I did that on that show and other stuff like that. And he was like, oh, yeah, I do. He's like, we do a lot of the effects stuff was us too. So maybe I could submit some of that stuff. I was like, oh yeah, do that. He's like, I know you guys don't do that though. I was like, yeah, we'll take it. I mean, it's your body of work. Yeah. It's your body of work. We'll take it. Absolutely. But it was like, he's like, yeah, if we have an E-fan on our truck and we get caught, we could get grieved.
100%. It's a whole different
all.
Megillah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, but again, that part of doing that in the old Western days, as I call them, you do get a more appreciation for everything that everybody does.
And it was at a time in my life where $75 or $125 a day was not an issue. Right. My expenses were low. I've always been good at saving money. Mm-hmm. I would always put money aside because I could go a couple weeks without working.
Right.
And when you don't know what you're missing, you don't miss it.
Right.
So the only thing that started causing me a lot of anxiety. And when I talk to younger prop masters or PAs in the film business who, now start to look at me as like, the old wise man of the set, which is very odd.
I know, right?
The one thing I always tell them is always make sure to put money aside.
Right.
And
so true.
And just anticipate, when you're working, don't live as if that's going to be your weekly paycheck all the time.
Yeah, that's good advice, especially now.
Yeah, in the past 4 years, you've seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, and it's true because you just never know when it's going to stop.
Right.
It could be anything. It could be COVID. It could be a strike. It could be anything. It's just a turn in the business. I mean, look in LA in the 90s or the early 2000s when all the work started going to Canada for the first time.
There's also, the things that my first thing that I would experience is I would work almost exclusively for one producer. Then all of a sudden that producer would leave the business or take a job in Canada or, get forced to hire somebody else because the star says I always work with this person. And now I'm out of work because, very rarely do many of us, I mean, I don't know about you two guys, but as many people as you have in your Rolodex, after a while you start to lose them. You can only tell certain people no so many times.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it seems that at any given time, as much as I have a whole crew of people I would say are fans of my work, there's maybe only 2 or 3 active producers who are calling me at any given moment.
Right.
And if something happens with those, I'm always breeding, new contacts.
Sure.
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like that happens a lot in this industry. It's like if you're most fresh in somebody's mind, it's like it's not necessarily that they don't like you a lot of times. It's just they haven't worked with you that they've forgotten you.
100%. I mean, that's like one of the downfalls of getting on a show that goes multiple seasons.
Yeah.
Because they call you the first 2-3 seasons. You're like, no, I'm still on the show. I'm still on the show. And then all of a sudden they stop calling you.
Right.
Yeah. They're still on that show.
But, it trickles down to us because I'm sure there are people that you like to call all the time as day players and then people who you eventually graduate to your full-timers. And when they tell you no, you bring in somebody else.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your dance card is full with the new blushing bride.
It's just the way it goes, for sure. When did you, how old were you, or what year did you come out to L.A.?
I came out to L.A. January of 91.
91, okay. Did you know Art Levinson in New York? You ever work with him?
I
don't. Production manager. Anyway, I just thought I'd ask because he's like...
I mean, the people that I knew in New York I knew some bigger ADs because when I PA'd, I was lucky to PA on some huge films. But anything I propped or crewed on was real low budget.
Right.
Low budget stuff.
I hear you. So again, what actually brought you to L.A.? I mean, was there a specific show, or you just packed up the truck and moved to Beverly?
Exactly that. My then girlfriend, now wife, the two of us just decided. Her brother worked in the film business. He was a DP at the time.
Okay.
And we just decided it's time to move to L.A. And it was definitely easier moving here with somebody.
Yeah.
Because I had that little bit of emotional support. And we just moved to L.A. Luckily, a lot of the music video people that I knew also did videos on the West Coast.
Right.
So I just gave them my name, but I told them that I'm moving up. So I one of the other reasons moving out to LA is I didn't introduce myself as a PA anymore.
Right.
Now in LA, when people said, "What do?" I said, "I'm a prop master."
Yeah.
Go.
And I was starting to get other films because now no one felt like they had to take a chance on the PA who wanted to do props.
Yeah.
Right. Smart.
Was your wife in the industry at that time too?
Yeah, at the time she was a costume designer. She was doing a lot of still work and catalog work.
Oh, cool.
Which, back then was paying like $500 a day.
Right.
So you were getting $75 a day at this point?
When I moved to LA, I was pretty much doing about $150 a day and $200 a day as a prop master. Right. And then I think I was getting $50 a day for my cargo van, which was my first prop truck.
Nice. So when she came out, did she continue doing the costuming stuff?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Very nice.
And where did you land when you came to LA? Where'd you live?
Sherman Oaks.
Sherman Oaks, okay.
Yeah. It was, and the only reason was a couple of people had recommended that area to us. We had looked downtown, but downtown is as seedy as downtown is now.
Oh, yeah.
No good. And then we looked in Hollywood, and honestly, after living in the city, I was tired of the noise and the screaming drunks on the street every Saturday night. So Sherman Oaks was nice. We got a beautiful apartment. We had our apartment still in New York that we were subletting, which was helping us pay for. It was an illegal sublet, mind you. That's the only kind you can really have in New York.
Yeah.
But it was also supplementing our rent here. And, we made it.
Right. And had you been to LA before you moved out?
My college girlfriend and I came out to LA in like the summer of '86, but strictly as a tourist.
Right.
And then my wife and I had come out here in November of '90 to look around, and that's when we rented our apartment and scheduled everything for January of '91.
Nice. Wow. So what was your first gig here in LA?
My first job in LA was working as a prop master on a low budget Disney film called Young Goodman Brown, based on the Nathaniel Hawthorne story. Okay. And it was the first time I got to travel out of town, back in Boston.
So you came
I came out here to work in Boston.
Wow.
But it was great. I mean, I actually prop mastered a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Low budget, but I got per diem. I got housing. Yeah. I got it was Boston Union, and I was given the chance at the time to join NABIT. And I remember, I think it was like the DP or somebody convinced me out of it, telling me that NABIT is going away and that you can't transfer the union
hours
over to LA. So I didn't join the union. But it was a great experience. Loved it.
Those are the days when you get per diem in cash.
Yeah. Yep.
When I first started, I got per diem in cash.
That was so sweet.
That doesn't happen anymore. No.
It's funny. I'm noticing on your wall you have a Jack Frost poster, low budget horror movie. My wife was the costume designer on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Did she costume design the snowman?
No, that was an effects costume. But they shot that all up in like Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear. And while I was in Boston shooting this movie, we were engaged and we were getting married in August. So all of our wedding planning was over the phone at night.
Wow. And
the movie ended like the weekend before I got married. So Marina flies to New York. We got married at my uncle's house. She travels to New York by herself, and I drive from Boston to upstate New York, to Woodstock.
Right. Nice. So you got married in Woodstock?
Yeah.
Very
My
nice.
uncle has a house in Woodstock. We got married in his backyard.
Beautiful.
Big, beautiful mountainous area.
Yeah, so
and then
gorgeous.
after our wedding, we moved back to LA.
Wow.
And then I just started doing a whole line of TV movies, which is such a shame that they don't really exist anymore.
No, they
don't. This
don't.
is when NBC did NBC Saturday night at the movies. Yep. And what was great about that was, even though they were small.
Yep.
And looking back, I'm going to guess $4 or $5 million, and I was getting paid like maybe $250 a day to prop master, but they were legitimate. They were not low budget action movies or anything like that. They're
dramas.
They had dramas, and they were actors who were major actors on TV shows, and it was like doing a real movie.
Yeah,
small. There's nothing small about Biodome, my friend.
You know something?
That is a classic.
It's so funny. My son went to film school, and when he was in school, he said that film was like this big cult movie that all of Pauly Shore's movies. That was like the movie that the kids loved. That was really my first big union movie.
Oh, really?
That was my first. I mean, I had done non-TV movies of the week, but the features I did were a lot of just action films.
Right.
But this was something that had, then big stars. I had a prop budget like I had never had before.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
A lot of manufacturing. I mean, it was my first. In a lot of ways, that's where my career really began. What I would consider true prop mastering, related to what I'm doing now, that was it.
Right.
Yeah, because you actually get to be the most creative you probably ever were, right?
It was. I remember at the time thinking, this is like working on Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
Because they're trapped in this biosphere. I don't know how well you remember the movie.
Yeah.
But everything that we did, we had to make golf clubs, and we had to make footballs, and we had to do all of this stuff for the guys, and it all had to be done with stuff that was in the biosphere.
Right, totally.
That's the fun part. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, and it was a great time. Really enjoyed it. And it kills me now when I look back and think that was 29 years ago, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, pretty close, actually. 1996.
And the sentimental part, our dog was in it. Stephen Baldwin and Pauly Shore needed a dog. And we brought our dog Cagney to set.
Right.
And there's a scene in the movie where they're shaving him, and he's all covered with shaving cream, and they're going, shave, poochie, and the razor didn't have a blade on it.
Right.
But now we look back on this movie with a tear in our eye, thinking, oh my God, this was before our son was born.
Right.
So we were watching, our dog was our child at the time.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. I remember that when you bring your own dog to be in the show. I had my dog in a couple shows. That was pretty cool. You can't do that anymore. But
and I think they paid us more to bring him in than I was getting
yeah,
paid.
Right, exactly. I always thought that too. It's like, wow, it's $500 for the dog, $500 for the trainer. You guys are making more than I am.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So that was your first union picture. How did you get in? Did it turn?
No, it was. I don't know if movies still do this now, but the movie and a lot of the stuff I was doing back then, it was non-union, and this is a mistake I made. It was non-union during prep.
Right.
So they hired me during prep, and then when the film started shooting, it was union. So I didn't have to join the union.
They do that now. Still. So yeah, you could. That's still the way. That's how I've gotten in a lot of my crew from earlier that I wanted that were non-union. Is you get them in before the paperwork's turned in.
Right,
yeah,
right,
exactly.
But at the time, because I was still saving money, I had enough days, and I was working pretty steadily, and most of the movies I was working on at the time, especially all the TV movies, were non-union during prep. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember what the buy-in for a prop master was then, like 3,000, something
like that.
So
I think it's 8 now.
And
Jesus.
And also it was giving us. I was getting my insurance days, so I was getting insurance. So I was thinking, why do I want to pay to become a prop master? I'm working all the time. I'm getting my insurance, but I don't want to have to part with the $2,500. And what I realized, what I was making a mistake on, which I didn't think of, when you're 29 years old, I wasn't putting money into my pension.
Right.
So
exactly. And
now
your years.
Right. So there was a solid 5 years where I could have been in the union, but I wanted to keep the money in my pocket. And I eventually joined the union when I got hired to do a movie. And funny enough, it was a TV movie of the week, but it was union from day one of prep. So I called the union, I joined, and I was in.
Yeah.
Nice.
Perfect.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I remember they used to the TV movies are called movies of the week. The MOW. Right. They used to have the MOW contract.
Yeah.
That you had to work under. Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Do they not have that now? People hit us.
Well, now they do. There's a lot of like lower budget streaming movies. There's Lifetime movies, but like the movies of the week were a regular thing. Like CBS, NBC, and ABC each did an original movie Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night.
Yeah.
And Duel, the Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
That was a TV movie of the week.
Yeah. And then they used to have the ABC after school specials.
Right.
Those were movies.
Yeah.
And then Hallmark. Did you ever do any Hallmark?
I did not.
I did a bunch of those things. Holy mackerel.
I've done a lot of Hallmark too.
Yeah. Nice.
The ones that didn't shoot out in Utah.
Right. The good thing about the movies of the week was a lot of the Hallmark movies tend to be Hallmark movies, where the movies of the week, sometimes it was a drama, sometimes it was a comedy. They were horror movies. Trilogy of Terror. Have you ever seen that?
No.
You would definitely know the parts of it. It has the little doll with the spear that's chasing Karen Black through the house. Again, TV movie of the week.
Yeah.
And there were all these movies that in Europe they were being released theatrically. So it really gave me a chance to do things the correct way, because I was working with seasoned producers, people who expected me to be a professional prop master.
Yep.
Where when I was doing a lot of the lower budget, the kickboxing and action films, they were happy to have me simply because I was willing to take the job. And those people as producers didn't know anything more than I do as a prop master.
Right.
So I was never, any mistake I made, I didn't really learn as much because I didn't have, if I made a mistake, I was the only person who realized it.
Right.
And when I started doing the TV movies of the week, and it was for Saban, I did a lot of Saban TV movies of the week. I was working with people who expected me to do what a prop master on any movie or TV show would do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was strange how, like you said, there were a lot of like heavy hitters that were doing TV movies. Like,
Sure.
I worked with Joanne Woodward and James Garner on a movie.
Yep.
And Walter Matthau. It's like, what the hell?
I mean, I did a Terry Garr TV movie of the week.
Right.
Trying to think of the people I worked with. Just all these people who at the time were, had major shows going on.
No, that was wild.
What was it like working on Baby Geniuses? I bet you there's some stories there. That's why I bring
my son was born on Baby Geniuses.
Oh, yeah?
He was the set baby. So when the movie wrapped, all of the clothes, we had product placement with Guess. He got every stitch of clothing, all
amazing.
of the furniture.
I love that.
Other than, honestly, and my wife will back this up, other than diapers, we did not have to buy my son a stitch of clothing until he was about 5. He was wearing Baby Guess shoes, Baby Guess leather bomber jackets. It was another film that I remember the call sheet on the final day of production was something like day 90 of 35. They thought
90 of 35.
They thought they were going to shoot it in 35 days. What happened was it was a Sony film, and it was it was like $35 million. It was a regular budgeted mid-level movie for the time, but it was being done by this small little company that previously had only done $1 million movies. And they were way out of their element. And part of the deal they had made with Sony was that they get to produce it.
Oh, and this was this shot out in Michigan?
It was shot. Or? No, it was shot in L.A. and Las Vegas.
Oh,
and
okay.
the director was Bob Clark, and who did Christmas Story and a lot of the great '70s horror movies. And his first AD, they were saying, we're never going to do this in 35 days.
Yeah, and did it push because of the nature of working with kids?
It pushed because, first of all, we never got a shot out before lunch, ever.
Yeah.
On any days that there were kids, which was almost every day. We would have twins and triplets for as many kids as you would have. But, as you can't bring them back. So if a kid had a meltdown and you had to have them leave and then bring in the twin, and then the twin had a meltdown, we were done. I mean, there were times at 2 p.m, they'd be like, we're wrapped. And we, sometimes they would.
It's like a pitcher.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you can't bring them back if they tap out.
Once they left the set, if they were under a certain age, I'm pretty sure it's still like this. You can't bring them back on.
So would you just end days early because almost everything had the kids in it.
Almost every scene had the kids in it. We had some little people working for the kids. One of the things that was really big at the time was making the babies talk.
Right.
And
that was digital.
But that was a big deal in 96 and 97. Yeah. It was great. I loved working with Kathleen Turner. Christopher Lloyd was on it. Kathleen Turner, I have these memories of every time my son would come to set, she's like, I'm going to hold Theo. And she'd be like walking around just holding Theo and stuff.
The good old days.
One of the things that happened on that, my assistant at the time, who's still truly one of my best friends, we had been friends from childhood. He eventually moved back east, but David Clark was my second. Mm-hmm. And David is a graduate of like Second City. He could have been Saturday Night Live's newest discovery.
Wow.
People used to refer to us as the Scott and Dave show because the two of us had done comedy together. Anyway, he did a dead-on impersonation of Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, really?
One day he calls. We're in one of the other offices, and he calls the UPM, talking like Christopher Lloyd.
Love it.
He calls up the secretary, the production coordinator, and says, "Get Bryman on the phone." And Eric Bryman was our UPM line producer. And Eric answers, goes, "Christopher, what can I do for you?" He goes, yeah, and I'm not going to do it in the Christopher Lloyd voice, but he goes, "I want you to know I'm not coming to work today."
Oh my God.
And he's like, "What happened?" He goes, "Yesterday when the ice cream truck came by, I lent one of your PAs, and I can't remember the PA's name. I lent her $5 to buy ice cream, and she never paid me back." and he goes, and he's going, "Let me tell you something. I'm a very rich man. It's not about the $5. If she had said, 'Could I have $5?' I would have given her the $5 and never looked back. But she said, 'Can I borrow $5?' And I expect to be paid back." So he is begging Christopher to come to work, saying, "We'll give you the money, and we'll make sure this never happens again." And David is just running him through the ringer, and then he starts walking towards the producer's office, and eventually with the phone, he goes into the producer's office, and the producer's like, "Son of a bitch." But what ended up happening is David ended up coming back for post-production to do all of Christopher's wild lines.
No.
Christopher wasn't available. So to this
That's
day,
amazing.
David still gets
Residuals.
still gets residual checks for Baby Geniuses.
Yeah, so he's done it for Christopher then, and he had to sign off on it, I assume, right?
Yeah, whatever. But he went into the studio, and whatever lines that they needed to get from
amazing.
Christopher, it's all my friend David doing all of Christopher Lloyd's work.
That's amazing.
Incredible. That's so funny. I had to ask you about your American Pie turns. You did 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because I did one.
Which one did you do?
I did the first one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I saw that. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. So what was that like? I mean,
I did a movie called Replicate. And I met Craig Perry, who was the executive producer.
Right.
To this day, I adore the man. I believe he worked on one.
That sounds familiar. I just remember Chris and Paul White.
Yep. And Craig and I hit it off, and he said, "Would you want to do American Pie 2?" And I was like, "Yeah." And started doing American Pie 2. And I would say amongst my 10 best times on a movie set ever were those 2 movies. And 2, I think, happened like 2 years afterwards.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know you did one. I'm surprised we've never talked about
Really?
that before.
God. I had so much fun on that movie.
Oh, you brought the pie, huh?
I got the pie. I got the pie. And what was it? Entertainment Weekly did a story about the pie.
About they interviewed you about the
pie?
pie?
They didn't. What they did is that they did a story and they said something about the pie came from Ralph's or something like that. And I wrote them a letter. I'm like, no, it didn't. It came from Costco.
This was a quality pie. Thank you very much.
Because we needed a big pie because
one does not go to Ralph's to get a pie for a major motion picture. Thank you.
I still have a Polaroid of Jason Biggs on top of the pie.
That's so
and then we had to make a foam one to stick to his when he stood up. So
now on American Pie 3, which was American Wedding,
right? You did that.
There's
too.
a scene because every scene Stifler had to do something that would gross people out.
Yes.
And on this one, on 3, he had to eat dog poop. So if you get the box set, there's actually a DVD called A Visit to the Prop Truck.
Oh, nice.
And they interview me and Dave, and we show them how we made the poop.
Right.
And we ended up hosting an MTV show every Saturday for like 3 weeks where they were sending guests to the set, and they were calling it the Scott and Dave Show.
Nice.
Seriously.
That's fantastic.
We would interview the cast, and MTV wanted us to do like a weekly show. And
would you only do like gross stuff on the show, or
no? It was always just goofball kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Of interviewing people. Like we would, they would go, "Well, we need you to do an interview," and we would be walking with the camera and the microphone, and Jason would go, "Hey guys," as if we were going to interview him, and then we'd walk next to him and interview, Chris Klein, interview somebody else.
Right.
And they wanted us to do a regular show, but my assistant Dave had to move back to Virginia. Thanks, Dave.
Oh man, that's too bad. That's funny. So did the Weitz brothers did they direct too, or
no,
I don't remember.
No, they did not. 2 was directed by Jesse Dillon, Bob Dylan's son, and 3 was directed by. He was the first AD, on the first 2 American Pies. I can't remember his name now, but he directed.
Okay.
He directed the third one.
I don't remember who did.
Very nice guy.
Yeah, they were such a great team, great crew. Everybody was so good on that.
Yeah.
Did they call you to do reunion?
No, by that point it had been 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
and they shot the movie in Atlanta.
Right.
And I think it was Atlanta. And I remember trying to get in touch with them.
Right.
And they said, no, they're just going to hire local people. And
yeah, it was funny. I remember I got a call about that. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're doing reunion. We want to get the original crew back from 1. Are you interested in doing it?"
Good luck with that.
I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And then we start talking about money, and they just had
Yeah.
no money. I'm like, "Oh, I guess you don't want it that bad." Right?
No, yeah. We get the team back together, but it is 20. How long? How many years later was reunion from the original? Was it like 20
Reunion-
years?
20.
yeah, it was a
Something
long
like
time.
that.
So that a lot of the people I knew didn't.
Yeah, they're established now.
I mean, and what's interesting is, when you talk about the team, there was probably more heart and soul with 2 and 3 because those were much bigger movies.
Right.
And with 1, the reason is, because no one on the film,
We had
had
no
been,
idea what was going to happen.
right, and no one, when they went to do reunion, because it was an all new crew, they just looked at the crew sheet from 1, not even thinking how many people were,
Right.
heart and soul from 2 and 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a funny thing about 1 is that we had no idea that it was going to be what it
It was
became.
such a great movie.
But we had
was
so
a
much
fun
fun
movie.
doing it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was a super fun movie.
I see also that you did a turn 1 season of Mad Men.
I did season 1.
Season 1. Did you
Yeah.
do the pilot?
I did not. I believe the pilot was shot in New York.
Oh, okay.
And then the series came out to LA.
Right.
And I did season 1, and then I ended up by the time season 2 came back, I did not want to go back.
I was going to say because that must have been fucking hard.
It wasn't hard. Just it was one of the few showrunners I did not care for.
Right.
And a lot of it for reasons we could talk about off
Sure.
the air.
But I mean, as far as doing, that was like one of the first period television shows.
It was my dream job.
Right.
Because, like I told you, I went to school for history and
Right.
American pop culture was my concentration. So I'm a total geek, especially with that area.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Or that era. So loved doing that. But it was just a very difficult show in other ways.
Right.
And then by the time season 2 came around, I had been doing the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I see.
Which was a dream job for me. I did all 2 seasons of that.
Wow. That was Dan Bishop, right? Was the production designer?
The production designer,
Yeah.
yeah. Who I had worked with on a TV movie earlier. How do you know Dan?
I did a show. I can't remember what show I did with him. He asked me about doing Mad Men, and it scared me. To be
Okay.
honest with you, I was like, "Fucking, are you kidding me? You want me to do period television?" Of course, I've done it since then, but at the time, I was like, "Wow, that sounds like it."
It's what's so interesting is when I look back on that. This was pre-eBay, I mean, it was
Yes.
the early days of eBay. It wasn't.
Oh,
pre-eBay,
yeah. Early
but it
days
was
of
certainly
eBay.
pre-Amazon.
Sure.
And I remember I had my prop trailer at this point, and I remember in my trailer on a shelf I had yellow pages for every major city in the U.S.
Right.
So when I was prepping, if I needed, I don't know, whatever, a 1962 XYZ, I would call antique stores and antique malls and start calling all over. There wasn't, I couldn't go on eBay and just put in, Bob Newhart album
Right.
or, Pile of Life magazines. And there were certain places in LA that I would go. Yep. And I also remember the prop master room at ISS. They used to have all the yellow pages there. And that's what told me
next to all the Sears catalogs and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, the yellow pages was the internet back then.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. And you could find something on eBay, but then it would take 8 weeks to get to you.
Well, because you had to send it. You still had to pay. There was no PayPal.
Right.
So you would have to send them a
the
check.
Money, yep.
I remember finding something on eBay, which was a must-have. And I pleaded with the guy. And it wasn't a lot of money. It might have been $50.
Right.
And I told the guy, I will give you like $250. Put it in the mail today. I said, look at my feedback. Look at my, here's my list of credits. I don't think I had an IMDb page at the time. But I sweet-talked the guy.
Right.
And he shipped me whatever it was. And I sent him the money right away. But I said, I need it right now. I said, FedEx it to me and get it to me in 2 days. And I'll pay you $200, $300, whatever I promised him.
Yeah.
Which was, and it was back again.
Talk about sweating bullets.
Oh, it's awful. Because there was, whatever it was the only place I could find it.
Right.
And, History for Hire didn't have it. No. ISS didn't have it. Hand Prop Room, I
and then you have to hit the antique marks and shop and pray. And,
there's a lot of driving around.
Yeah.
And what Mad Men was Mad Men had the expectations of a show today.
Exactly.
Where, when I look at like the kind of graphics that those early TV movies I wanted, piece of letterhead. Remember Letraset letters?
Yes. Oh my God. I still have some of those.
Do you know what Letraset are?
I have no idea.
You used to go to World Supply art supply store. I
missed that place so much.
And Letraset were these. You would get it was a plastic sheet.
It's like 8.5 by 11, yeah.
It was like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of plastic, and there were little letters on it. So you would get like 6
fonts.
A's. Yeah, and it would all be one font.
Right.
So one might be Helvetica. So I would have this library in my truck of like a dozen different fonts, and you would take the paper.
They're each an individual one.
And you had to rub them off.
You would rub them with a pencil. So if I was making a business card, I would cut out a piece of paper. I would have the paper cutter, cut out the business card. Then I would have to draw the lines so I could do it straight. And I would have to do, Joe Smith, attorney at law. And I'd put the phone numbers. And then after I made that, I would go to Kinko's or Staples, whatever, and make photocopies of that one and then cut them out.
And you just pray that it didn't break.
Right. And if it broke, I would sit there with a Sharpie and have to color, because the letter was like a very thin vinyl.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you put it on the paper, if you didn't put it on
right, transfer paper.
Yeah, it would break.
Yeah.
So there'd be a little fracture line in the middle.
That's right. Or you have to scrape it off with an X-Acto knife and start over again.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah. But the thing is that, when you see, like, when you watch older shows like All in the Family and Archie is drinking a can of beer and all it said is beer.
Right.
It's because that's all that film could deliver back then.
100%. Right. And nobody cared.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just because they couldn't conceive of the idea of us doing something beyond that.
That fast.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Now the expectations are through the roof.
Yeah. Now if I have to do a book cover or a magazine cover, it has to look like a book cover or a magazine
100%.
cover.
Oh yeah, perfectly.
and you can do it.
Right. Which is, it's something that also when I talk to young prop masters, I always say, everyone always says, don't give up the work. And I think one thing that's very important, this is where you put in the solemn, like, build-up music. I think it's important that we bring on new things. I think technology is very important for our union. There's a lot of guys, our age, who don't know Photoshop, don't know Illustrator, but the younger guys in their 20s and 30s who are coming up, I think things like the graphics on phones should be props. Graphics on computers should be props. Instead of worrying about things like, having an extra person for chairs.
Right.
I agree with you.
I think
wholly,
my problem, my and it's been the same stick in the dirt that I've been grinding for years. My problem with the chairs is you go to too many people on a set and you say, what does the prop master do? Well, they do the chairs. That's why we're not being nominated for Emmys, and that's why they want to hire local, because they think, well, anybody could move chairs. Right. We need to make sure that people realize that we are the production designer of the prop department.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also the representative of the art department on the set.
Correct.
Because that's gone away a lot too. People don't realize that once the set decorator turns that set over to us, it's our set.
It's our set.
Okay.
And I'm glad you say that, because that is something that I do take very seriously.
I do too. I always treat the on-set dresser like they're part of my team, first and foremost from the start of the show. But
there's the look of the show. Especially nowadays, I bring in, when we manufacture props, when there's a lot of stuff that it looks the way it does because of me. You know, if it's a food scene,
100%.
that's my design.
Oh,
If I need to do a magazine or a DVD cover, I'm doing it. I want to do it. I don't want the art department to do it for me for several reasons. One, I enjoy doing it. But when the actor looks at it and goes, holy shit, this is so cool. Yeah. I want that so cool to be going to me, not to some graphic artist who is no better at doing it than I am.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's a prop. Right. So, you know, when people say, well, you know, props should be doing the chairs, don't give up the work. It's like, how about replacing the work with stuff that gives us a level of notoriety and a level of respect that other people can't do? Right. Because the local prop master in Las Vegas cannot do the level of graphics and manufacturing and design that I can do, that you guys can do.
Definitely, yeah.
They can certainly move the chairs as well as any of us.
Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt there. No, you were bringing that up. You mentioned before we started the podcast, as we walked in the door pretty much, like about how technology and everything's changed, that it's connected us too, and has helped as prop masters to kind of.
But it's weird that, you know, it's one thing we have to, I think the older prop masters, and by older now I'm almost saying guys and women, you know, just prop masters over the age of 40, that we can't try to steer our craft away from the things that we don't know or are afraid of. So for the older prop masters, if you're not technically hip and things like that are just intimidating to you, you should still realize that these are the things that are going to propel us as an industry.
Yes.
That, you know, when you see what a production designer creates, what a costume designer creates. When I did Mad Men, I personally created every product box that we used, all the ad campaigns, all mine. Right. I did not job any of that out. And then I looked at the work that the set decorator did. She went to she didn't build stuff. Right. She got pages, and I'm not belittling her work, but she looked at magazines and old ads and stuff, and then went to furniture prop houses, you know, the Omegas and the CPs, and decorated from that. Where the stuff that I was doing, I had to make a Sara Lee cheesecake box. And the way I ended up making that was I found ads in enough copies of Life magazine that showed me enough angles of the box that I was able to lay it out on Photoshop and Illustrator, and I reproduced the box.
Right.
Nice.
You know, and when I'm thinking, this is what Emmys should be given out for. I mean, I've done plenty of jobs where, you know, I just go to ISS, I take stuff off the shelf, and I bring it to set. But then I've done jobs, and all of us have done jobs, and there's prop masters. You know, I remember when Private Ryan came out, and I remember thinking, prop master was,
I don't know,
good friend of Greg Bielson's too, and I should know his name.
That's everybody.
He died very young.
Oh, Jerry Moss?
Jerry Moss.
Yeah.
And Jerry was a wonderful guy. I remember when I was looking to buy my truck, I asked if I could look at his truck, and he helped me. He told me what to look for and so on. But I remember thinking, Private Ryan is what wins an Oscar.
Yeah.
When you think of because that wasn't just go to Target and go to Amazon and buy it all. I mean, he had to recreate an entire world, and a lot of that was not CGI. So when you see 1,000 soldiers storming the beach, he's propping out 1,000 soldiers.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And, you know, and the level of work that he had to do all gets put upon the production designer. So when they win an Oscar, the production designer brings a set decorator on set, and a lot of times the prop master is not even mentioned. And I find that unbelievably insulting.
100%. Let me ask you this question, though. On a show like Mad Men, how many day shoot was each episode? Do you remember? I mean, that's a long stretch.
Around 8 days.
Really?
Something like that, yeah. Okay. I don't remember it being hazardously short, and probably 8 days.
Yeah, because I think a lot of what goes into, a lot of the problem that property masters are facing today is that the shoot days are so short that you don't have time to do all the graphics. I mean, because I remember I used to do a lot more graphics than I do now.
See, it all depends on the level of the shoot. I've been really lucky. My last several years doing TV, I've gotten a lot of bigger, high-profile TV shows. Things like, like Old Man, which to me is not TV. It's a feature divided into seven parts. Everything about it is like a feature. Right. And I've been able to find the time. Also, and it's not to save production money. That's not. It's when I'm doing. I had to do in Old Man, I had to, and I remember the production designer just loved it. I had to do a 1970s manifest, and there's a scene where John Lithgow is in this building and he's looking through files and he pulls out this folder and it's multi pages of a manifest because he's looking up somebody. And I did it on the old kind of tracing paper, and I really built something nice. And for me to have had someone else do that, there would have been too much explanation, too much back and forth. Yep. It was really just because I can do it, I wanted to do it.
Right.
I try to do it as much as I can also, just for a couple. I think that's one of the few places where we can almost put an Easter egg in every single show.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like one of my favorite parts about the graphics, is because it's like almost every modern show I've ever done, there's always a scene where they're drinking wine. You know what I mean? So like that label, and this is every show. If you ever see a bottle of wine on any of my shows, it's always going to be a different label because I make one new one for each show, but it's always going to be Trudel's Vineyards or Trudel's Cab.
My
you know what I mean?
My son's face is on diaper boxes and little handy white boxes.
Exactly.
I did Switched at Birth. They're using laundry detergent, and he's on the softener. It's his baby picture on it.
Right. Nice. My mugshot's on one of the article of a newspaper somewhere. It's so that's where I think the most gratifying is, because we can actually, if we do take time to the graphics, that's like the little wink to your parents or your 100%. Family back at home, because that's what my mom will always like post about. Not that I need that, but that's what she'll like. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, you know, when I did Popular, Ryan Murphy's one of his first shows, it was just such a farce, and every graphic in it was a joke.
Right.
You know, and I got to do that. You know,
and as long as the graphic doesn't take away from the film, it's
right.
That's the good thing about it. An Easter egg should be subtle enough that to anybody else, it's just a baby on the Pampers box.
Right.
But to me, it's something that, you know, will bring a tear to my eye for the rest of my life every time I watch that episode.
Yeah.
And it's, I remember on Popular, I had to do a brochure called Know Your Vagina.
I had to do.
Whoa. What Easter egg did you put in that one?
I had to do a brochure on American Pie 3 called Know Your Penis. We should get those together. And I wrote the whole thing out for Eugene Levy to read.
Same here. So that's what I did. I had a 2-fold brochure, and I listed the whole thing, and I wrote them all out, and they were just dying on set reading it. They were like, "Oh my God, you're killing us here!" And it's just so much fun.
I have a certain graphics I just hold on to, and I reuse them a bunch. And whenever I have to do a novel, I always have the back cover, and every so often the actor will actually start reading it, and they'll just start laughing.
Right.
Because
they do almost every time.
Yeah.
I know, now they just want their lines on it.
Yeah.
You know? But that's good too. You know
when I did Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Yes.
And there's a scene when Paul Blart is having dinner with his daughter, and she wants to go to UCLA, and he wants her to go to like the University of New Jersey at, you know, Englishtown, Manalapan Township, blah blah blah, this long thing, and he couldn't. Right. And when he goes, well, what's wrong with going to the U of NJ? And he couldn't remember the letters. So he had a big plate of pasta, and I had taken a Sharpie, and along the rim, of the bowl, I had written all the letters out so he could read it.
How was that guy?
Wonderful.
I bet. He's just like such a great sight actor.
Okay, hands down, probably where Biodome, I think, has captured a certain amount of respect because it's become a cult film, and it was one of those movies that was so bad it's good. I would say Mall Cop 2 might be one of the least respected movies I've done in the film world, in the world of cinema. Mm-hmm. But with hands down, it was the single most difficult movie I've ever worked on. If you watch Mall Cop with the idea of propping it, it was as big, if not bigger. It was as big, if not a bigger heist film than any of the Ocean 11 movies.
Right.
I mean, we made gag after gag. It was
that's the thing about comedy.
Watch the movie and think, if I was propping this, why wouldn't I jump off the roof of the Wynn Hotel?
Did I hear those Segway modifications cost upwards of like $500,000 or something like that?
Each one, the Segways, we had to make these. Well, most of the Segways were, I think, about $80,000 each.
$80,000
But then we made, because the thing with a Segway is we bought regular Segways,
right? And
then ISS had done the modifications to them. But the big thing is the Segway is very particular. and everything has to be balanced, because if it's not balanced right, it shuts off.
I see.
For safety.
Sure.
The one that we spent probably about 200 plus for was at the end. We were calling it the Batmobile of Segways, and he goes to this mall cop convention at the hotel,
right.
And at the end of the movie, he ends up stealing that to save the day, and that had rocket boosters on it,
right,
and beanbag guns, and all this stuff. And ISS built us 3 of them, 2 functional ones and one that had been destroyed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did Perry Blake design that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's fantastic. He's one of the reasons I got into props or whatever. He introduced me to the world of the art department.
See, really. I was lucky to get on that because Perry normally works with Tim.
Mm-hmm.
And on that movie, I had been doing, and I still have been working with the director, Andy Fickman. So Andy said, I want to bring my prop master on. So Perry kind of yielded to Andy.
Oh,
so
cool.
I got a chance to work with Perry. Such a sweet guy.
Such a sweet guy. He still calls me to this day and tries to bring me on little projects. He directs too, but yeah, he's fantastic. He was one of the people. So when I first moved out to LA, I cold email everybody that worked in art department because I knew I wanted to work in art department, and we sent out 1,000 emails. A couple people get back, and right. Perry was one of the few people that was like, "You want to come on to set tomorrow? Come on with me, and I'll show you around."
You just reminded me, going back to PA days, my first resume. And this is when I was looking at PA, and I was going building to building in New York to production offices to drop off resumes. And when I say I had nothing, I had Bloodhounds of Broadway, and that was it. Yeah. I had nothing else. So I had put Bloodhounds of Broadway under production experience, and then I wrote, and this was on my legitimate resume, I wrote movies I wish I had worked on.
Nice.
And then I just listed all of these movies, the 1970s King Kong and all these movies. And I remember UPM's reading them going, "You worked on King Kong? You worked on, you worked on Bosom Buddies?" And I go, no, these are things I wish I had worked on.
That's amazing.
Is that why you have Social D on your IMDb?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we wanted to talk to you about the anomaly that you have of working with your wife.
Okay.
Right? So I know Mikey Mikey does the same thing. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I never had that. But so how did that come about?
The whole time originally when we were looking to have kids, her career was doing much better than mine. And we had it's amazing. Think about this now. We had 7 miscarriages leading up to the birth of our son.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, brother.
So it seems like a bad dream now, looking back on it. But we used to tell our son all the time, it was him 7 times. He was being such a pain in the ass that he could never do what we asked him to do. So, for 5 or 6 years, she was consistently pregnant. Yeah. And she had pretty much left the industry, and she was kind of doing some retail work and stuff. And then by the time our son was born, my career had started to take off and was bringing in regular money. So where at one point we thought I was going to be the house husband,
right?
It ended up just going back the opposite direction. So we decided that we didn't want to have to go the nanny route.
Right.
And my career was doing fine. And, we said, okay, what I'm making is our living, and what the kit and trailer is bringing in is our second income.
Right.
So we were able to justify her staying home and being there for, being the classic mom, as much as she is not the classic mom.
Yeah.
After our son, got into high school, once he graduated high school and got into college, we were looking for an opportunity to get her back in the business.
Right.
And a producer friend of mine was doing a low-budget horror movie. And he said it was going to turn union. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. It was literally between hiatus of a show I was doing. And I made a deal with him because he didn't have a lot of money. He couldn't afford my kit and trailer. He was able to pay me my rate. And I remember saying, okay, we'll do this. You sign the budget over to me.
Okay.
Whatever's left over, I get to keep.
Nice.
And if it goes over budget, it comes out of my pocket based on this script.
Sure.
So you guys can't add stuff and expect me to pay it. So pretty much everything they needed in the movie, I had in my kit. And what I didn't, I rented from ISS. But anyway, so the movie turned as it was supposed to, and she got her 30 days and came in as a prop assistant.
Wow.
and her, it's great because it's given me a coordinator.
Sure. How long ago was this?
This would have been, oh my God, my son was 16, 11 years.
Okay. 11 years. So yeah, it was a now $6,000 entry fee instead of $2,500.
Yeah. Well, she came in as an assistant.
She
had no interest in prop mastering. She's great at food styling. She was when she first started wanting to come back in the business, she would work with me. But if I was doing a smaller job that I could only have 3 people and I didn't have a place for her, she was doing some independent food styling. She had assisted on a couple Disney shows, but it wasn't really what she wanted to do. She wasn't looking to be known as a food stylist or as a prop assistant. She wanted to work where we could work together.
Right.
Yeah.
And
sure.
She didn't have any desire to go back to costuming either? Or?
No, because at this point, I mean, the work she had done was predominantly still work.
Right.
And now, keep in mind, she had stopped 6 years before our son was born.
Yeah.
So,
she
this was already
earlier.
25 years
Right.
already. And she didn't want to start a career all over with.
Right.
And it also gave us a chance because now when I travel, we could travel together.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's nice bringing in the extra income. I learned making the joke that she's a contribution to my kit fee is not something I could say to her.
Yeah.
Referring to her as my extended kit fee is not a good idea.
No.
But she's people really like her on set. She's wonderful. The accountants just adore her. She does all of my accounting. She does all of my coordinating. She does, when I need food stylist, she'll either do it or she'll bring in additional food people,
Right.
And she'll handle the budget for all of that. So it's a good way for, on a strictly professional level,
Right.
for her to handle that end. The most difficult part and it's on both of us,
Yeah.
is that sometimes I find myself being unnecessarily hard on her.
Sure.
That I wouldn't, if you were my assistant, I
Right.
wouldn't feel comfortable talking to you the way I could talk to her.
Right.
Sometimes, familiarity breeds contempt.
Of course.
I also find myself, and not being necessarily rude or cruel.
Right. Just
But
curt.
well, I hold her to task where I might let you slide with
Right.
something. I find with her that I don't want anybody to say, oh, it's, she's only here because she's the boss's wife.
Right.
And I'm very conscious of that. So if I make a deal with the producer, when they say, well, you could have this additional person, but you have to keep her to 10-hour days.
Right.
I only keep her to 10-hour days.
Right.
If she's out shopping, I never give her meal penalties. I try to be so fair with her that I'm probably being a little unfair.
Right.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and I think it's just I think it's holding the position and gaining that trust, at least with the producers, to make you as a team look inseparable.
I do not want the producers to think for a moment that she's here because it's extra money to our house.
Yeah.
Right.
That she is doing a work. She is. She truly is doing a needed job that I don't feel someone else could do as well.
Yeah.
And then, and when we started, there was a lot of me having to remind her, it's like, look, I'm the boss. When we're home, we're Scott and Marina. But on set, no one cares.
Yeah.
Right.
We have, that's like I was saying, we work like such a good team together. There's nobody else I can imagine doing that position. But like there are those moments like where I have to like say, would you treat your regular boss like this if it wasn't me? Or would you talk that way or like push that?
Question me.
And vice versa. Like I don't want to say like, it's like,
of course.
she also has to say, would you treat me like this if I were another employee? Or something like, yes, you're right. And it's like,
Right.
it's
I mean, you have,
like,
but that's, that's natural. And there was no real surprises in that. Sometimes you have to catch yourself.
Right.
I had made a mistake once on one show. I wanted to try her as the on-set person, and she didn't like it, and it was just not her thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we were able to correct that.
Right.
And then I realized I'm not going to try to put her in positions where, not try to put her in positions that I wouldn't put someone else in. Everybody tends to be where they need and want to be.
Yeah. There's an unspoken thing though too, because like after a while, it's like there's such a second nature. Like I don't need to I don't need to say anything to her
Right.
to do the job. Like, she knows I do my breakdowns, how I do my breakdowns, and when I do it. She's usually on the other side of the computer when I'm in my production meetings and my prop meetings and stuff like that. Right. So she's usually taking notes in that. She has the schedule of what I do in the breakdowns. I never need to say a word. She knows what she needs to get, when she needs to get it, and when it needs to be there. So it's like, I'm never going to have that with another person. And that's
sure.
And you know they have your back.
100%.
Okay, you never have to worry about that.
And they can have all your passwords, and you don't need to worry about that either.
I know. My assistant has all my passwords, and it's like, sometimes I think about that and think, oh, whatever. We've been together forever. I mean, if she wants to take me down, go for it.
Yeah.
Right. So, there are times, I would say I love it 90% of the time. It's, there are certain moments where if we do irritate each other, we can't escape. We're there, but we've been very good for getting past that.
Sure.
It's also, we've been doing it long enough now, but I do find myself on a consistent basis being a little harder on her again, because the last thing I ever want is the thought of the line producer and UPM going, the only reason she's here is because she's the prop master's wife. And on the call sheet, she uses her maiden name, and I've told my crew, don't refer to her as my wife in front of other people. Her name is Marina.
Sure, she's her own person.
Right.
Did she legally change her name to your last name though?
When we got married.
When you got married, though?
Yeah.
So, I wonder if we should do that. That's right. But luckily, our line producers I've worked with consistently, the first show is like, oh, it's your wife. It's like, yeah. And there was like a little hesitation, but went through. Right. Second season came around, she approached me, and she was like, oh, like apparently the studio had a problem, not with us, but I guess there was a different situation in a different department or whatever that they had a problem with. They're like, oh, so we got to hen lightly, but there's no way in hell I'm going to let you lose her as because after she's seen on the surface that how we work together, it's like, no, you guys are a powerhouse.
Right. Exactly.
And
they, on Old Man, for example, and I've been blessed with, the greatest line producer in UPM I've had in my career. And with the line producer, he sees what Marina does. When he's looking at all of our cachet, he's noticing how much Amazon we get and how good she is for returning it all.
Right.
Stuff that we don't use. He sees that, we're not going over in props because she's very good on saying, it's Tuesday, this stuff is due today, due tomorrow.
Right.
So I would say when we first started working together, I was giving her enough leeway. I was probably being kinder to her than I would have been because, I was very advanced in my career and she was very green. So then, yes, I was probably giving her more than I might have given someone else. But she came up, her learning curve and coming up to speed was almost instantaneous.
Right. Well, she had production savvy from years ago, too.
Yeah, and she's just a smart, on top of it person.
Right. Yeah. So when you do episodic television, do you work the set or do you prep?
I always prep.
Okay.
Yeah. My office is in my prop trailer.
Right.
Same.
So I'm always on the set.
Right.
And the only time I tend to be a little set absent is if we're doing a lot of night shoots and I just I just can't do it.
Go to meetings.
Yeah.
But I got into the film business because I love the idea of working in film. I tend to work the hours. So if call is at 7 and we work until 8, I'm there the whole time. I'm very present on set, but I do have an on-set person and an assistant on-set person. So the actors all know me very well. The episodic directors know who I am very well.
Right.
What I do try to do when I go to set is I don't want to steal the thunder of my on-set person.
Yeah, that's hard.
Because the minute I come to set, all the questions come to me.
Right.
And everything comes to me. And honestly, sometimes I don't really know it as well.
Yeah.
They've
been here.
The little nuances. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to steal that person's thunder.
Right.
Yeah.
So I try to stay back. The only time I tend to go on set, and using Old Man as the example, if there's a particular gag or something that
That's
I've
what I
been
was
working
thinking.
out, something that has a lot of little, like if Jeff has to assemble a weapon,
Right.
and we had this this audio laser gun he made, and he's supposed to be building it in this hotel room, and all the pieces are scattered out. And I had gone over with him in rehearsal. This is how we build it. I gave him his action.
Sure.
And for that, the on-set person was very happy to stand back, and I took the continuity photos, and I was the on-set person because I knew it.
Right.
And it wasn't because my on-set person was not capable of learning it, but I didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel. I already knew how to do it.
Exactly.
It was just,
and that's exactly the point, because that just happened to me recently on the show I'm on now, where it was something complicated in the amount of time that it would take to show my assistant how it all works and all the intricacies of it. It wouldn't be enough time, so I had to go on set to do it.
Yeah.
And it becomes your baby too.
Yeah, and then I find myself when I'm on set, I'm like, I'm running the set. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm thinking, I don't want to do that to him either.
But then, it's also part of his responsibility to realize, ultimately, it is always your set.
Right.
And if you need to take possession of it for a short period of time for the betterment of whatever reason you so choose, that's your prerogative to do that.
Right.
I think that's most prop masters though too. It's just like, especially a running TV show, like you don't have the time to be able to sit down and teach them how to like show an actor how to do stuff. It's like you're gonna get bursts of time, and then we've all done it where it's like, oh, here I got to show you something, and then oh, I gotta. Like, all right, I'll wait here for another minute for you to come back. Okay, all right, now and then. Oh,
there.
All right, I'm just gonna show you later.
For me, what was very difficult, I did Queen of the South, and we shot that in Dallas and then in New Orleans, and that show was probably 80% shot at night. So I was working 7 a.m. If their call was at 4 p.m., I would try to open the set at 4.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
And then leave by 6 or 7 because I couldn't do the overnight.
Right.
And then I had to always work it to where I would bring my second, I would leave the set master there, then I would bring the guy who was my call from LA, my friend Mark. He would come with me, and then I would bring him in early, and I would show him how the gag worked. And I would go over it with him because there was just no way in the world I was going to be there at 4 a.m. to have to go through that.
No.
So what are your guys' procedures for like making sure that your set master understands the prop that you're turning over to them?
What I always do before every episode, they get the breakdown. I give them a breakdown, and I tell them I want them to know that they have to look at the breakdown. I said, look at the call sheet after you look at my breakdown. I said, the AD is going to miss a lot of things. I said, you're also looking at my breakdown. You're also looking at my breakdown because there are a lot of things that are in it that are not in the script, things that from directors' meetings and production meetings, they might say, Scott, we need yellow Jell-O here today, and it goes in my breakdown. I said, if you don't read my breakdown, you're going to miss it. And then I always do my pull for the following day. So Tuesday, I pull for Wednesday.
Right.
And then they get the Decker with all of the props on it. And I said, in the morning, what I want you to do. And I said, there's a few things that upset me. And I said, one of them is a prop having to be asked for by an AD because you didn't know it was here. I said, here are all the props. This is your chance to protect me because if I've forgotten to give you something, in the morning, you're looking through the boxes and you could say that the sippy cup is not there.
Yeah.
And it's your chance for me to go back to the truck, and I'm not beyond making that mistake. But by the time I do the pull and enough people have looked at it, by the time it gets to set, there should be nothing missing.
Yeah, nobody should be waiting for
and
props,
also, that's one aspect of it. The other reason is that I want them to know what's there. I want them to know what the props are beforehand.
Yes.
You would think it's a big duh when you tell your people to make sure to always read the script, but I've had that issue in the past where I'm talking to, if not my main set person, but the second person on set, and I know they've never read the script.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's why also I make sure that everybody knows what's happening before the day of. It's like, because back in the day, we used to be, sit at the end of the tailgate at the end of the night and go through the call sheet and do we have this? Where is it? Make sure everybody's got it together. Now, again, I know a lot of people, especially in television, they have 2 people on set and that's it.
Right.
Okay, but I've been fighting for 2 people on set plus a truck person. And I'm telling you, that makes all the difference in the world.
The difference.
What I've had on my last couple shows is I have one person who's my coordinator, myself, a truck person, and 2 people on set.
Yeah. That's the perfect. It's
It
like
is
the perfect combination.
Yeah, because the 2 people that are running the set, they get to run the set. I got one guy who's taking care of principals, and then somebody else is doing background, and then they vacillate between. And then my truck guy, and I'm going to give him a shout out. His name is Drew Knapp. If he ever stops working for me, if you get him, you'd be golden because he's fucking incredible. And I mean, this guy is so dialed in. I mean, first of all, he's a Marine. Okay, so he's got that mentality, and he goes through everything, and he wants to know what everything is. So he'll come up to the office the day before and go over the props for the next day and make sure he knows what everything is, how it all works, because he's going to be the one who's going to translate that to the set master, and then it's like, boom, hands off, gone. And it's like clockwork. It's amazing.
That's how, when you have that dynamic, that's what I usually have do. The truck person puts together the next day's cart, and then before the day's over, we'll sit down and go through everything, and I'll fill in the gaps of anything that's missing.
You guys could probably work on 100 shows with me, and you'll never, very rarely see me lose my temper. I like to try to be the Hawkeye Pierce of the prop business. I like to bring a sense of comedy.
Yep.
I feel like I'm efficient enough in my job. My budget is always good, so that if I want to be a little bit of the class clown, the producers, and I don't overdo it, but I do it to a point where the producers like me for it. I bring a certain amount of levity, and it shows that I'm enjoying it. But the only thing that kills me, and I tend to get it mostly when I'm on jobs out of town, is that when I feel like I'm the only person who knows what's going on.
Absolutely.
I know when I have a set person or someone in the truck or somebody who is, they come to me, they say, Scott, what do you need? And I tell them, and then as soon as they're done, they stop.
Right.
And it's not that if you're leaning, leaning, you're cleaning. I don't mean, there's not get busy work. But on a big enough show, it's like, put things together that need to be returned, double check what's going on next week. I've worked on shows where not only do I know people, and I know when people are not reading the script, but I also feel like unless I explain to them what to do, they don't know. And I don't like that feeling, thinking if I got sick and didn't come in tomorrow, there would be nobody who could just cruise right in. Which is another reason I like working with Marina.
Yes.
Marina and my truck person, Mark Richardson, have been with me forever.
Yeah.
And, in past February, my mother had passed away, and I had to leave set for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And it is nerve-wracking. And we worked to where Marina stayed behind. And my son and I went back east. And the 2 of them handled everything.
Yeah.
And everything was fine, right?
Everything was fine. But it's... I'm sure there are plenty of prop masters who would just be like, screw it. I have a family funeral to go to. Sure. I don't give a shit what happens on set.
Yeah.
My name is still on the sign hanging over the door.
Of course.
And, I tell producers when I get the job, I go, even if the show is not my demographic, like I did Switched at Birth, which was a wonderful show. One of my favorite showrunners, Lizzie Weiss, just adore her. And it was my show. Lizzie might have been the showrunner, but as far as the props went, I consider it my show. And I couldn't have been less of the right demographic for that show, but I watched every episode, and I was the biggest champion of the show.
Yeah, totally.
And it was mine.
It's yours, yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta own it. And again, that's the thing that I keep that I want to impart upon my crew. Own it. Okay, own what you're doing, own the job. If I'm not there, you got to care just as much as I'm caring.
Right.
And keep your head in the game. That's the thing. It's for me, the thing, my pet peeve, and I'm like you.
Is it ice?
It's not ice. It's not ice. We could talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. No, it's, I hate it when my crew's, and again, I don't have that now because I have a great crew now, but I've had crews in the past where they, you come to set and they're like, hey, boss. and then they call you boss, and then, everybody like on their toes, and then the minute you leave, everything goes south.
Yeah.
Right.
They've blown smoke up my ass is how I call it.
Right.
And that drives me fucking nuts. I'd rather not do it. Like I had Butch Kitchen was my assistant for a while, and I'd come to set and he'd say, "What the fuck are you doing here?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Nothing's wrong. I'm just checking out." And he's like, "It's my set." I'm like, "I get it, man. That's cool." And I give it to him, because I know he cares and he's got it covered.
I'll tell the people on set that you need to do everything you can to impress me in the same regard that I'm trying to impress the director or showrunner or line producer. I said, it is all of our shows, and it doesn't matter what the position is. It's not, if things screw up, I'm going to take all the heat. And it's not a matter of you guys getting heat from me. I said, we're collectively keeping this at a certain level.
Yeah.
But at the same point, when you said people would call you boss, see, I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't like being called boss. I don't like being called sir. And I don't consider myself the boss.
Right.
And I always tell people this, that don't make me become the boss.
Thank you.
I said, what I want to be is the administrator. I will go to the movie. I will go to the meetings. I will talk to everybody. I will design it. Yes, my name is the prop master, and I'm on the top line. But if everybody does their particular job, I said, the last thing I want is conflict. It makes me very uncomfortable. Yep. And for me to have to take you aside and say, the AD today said, every time they were looking for you, you're never around, or you're not paying attention, or you're always giving them back talk, or you're hitting on the PAs, or you're doing this, you're doing that. I said, I'm pissed off at you before we even talk.
Right.
And I'm not pissed off at you for what you did. I'm pissed off at you for putting me in the position to have this talk with you.
Right.
And it's very difficult for me. And I tell people that. I said, we have to check our friendships at the door.
Right.
And I say that to Mark. I said, I can't be your friend on set. We could all be friendly and get along, but we all have responsibilities, and we'll all drop the ball.
Yeah. Every single person makes mistakes. It's about owning it.
Right. And it's about caring.
Right.
It's about, and again, don't do it because you want to impress me. Do it because you want to impress yourself.
Well, it's because the job that you have to do.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
When I wish I didn't have to go to my mother's funeral, it was not because I didn't want to have to go for that reason, but it was because the set that I own, it's my job, and I wanted to be there, and everybody should be there because it's theirs.
Yep. Yeah.
It's not a matter of, some people go, well, you're the one who gets all the congratulations. It's like, I don't know how much congratulations I get. And I go, that's immaterial. I go, whatever congratulations I'm going to get is going to be totally watered down and forgotten, because ultimately the production designer gets it, then the director gets it, and in the long run, it's going to be the actor who has to, live or die on how the show did. By the time whatever great gag prop I made is seen, it's miles down the road and it's forgotten about who did it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I hate having to be the boss.
No, I know, I agree. Because again, I don't know if it's true for you, but in the beginning when I was doing a lot of non-union, my crew were my friends. I mean, so I lived with them. We partied together, whatever. And again, on set, we just had each other's back. Yes, I was the property master because, like you said, there has to be a figurehead for the department. But other than that, it's like everybody can bring something to the table. Everybody's got a good idea. I'll listen to anything, and as long as we're all like got each other's back and we're working great. And I can't work any other way. I've had to work under those conditions where people are like bullshitting me, and then I hear later, as soon as you left, those guys, they fuck off or whatever. And it's like, I don't want to do it.
And it's
just changed my fucking crew because I'm not going to be that asshole who screams at my crew.
Right. And there's also just this feeling of, I don't know if camaraderie is the right 100%. Word. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if your idea is in conflict with mine and I just don't like it, it will be my idea.
Of course.
I mean, I'm definitely not the my way or the highway guy. If you have a better way of doing it, let me know.
Sure.
But I have told people at times where I've had people insisting, well, let me do it this way. Let me do it this way. I'm like, you know what? I'd really rather you do it this way.
Right.
And then they go, well, I'm going to do it my way. What do you think? And they're not telling me that they're going to quit if they don't do it. I say to them, okay, I'm going to let you do it your way. But if it doesn't turn out as well as my way would have, we're going to have a problem with this. So I said, it's not because I want it to be my way because it's some kind of pissing contest. It's because I'm comfortable doing it this way and I know it works.
Exactly.
The other thing I ask from my people is I said, keep in mind, keep in mind we're an artistic department. Right. I said, do not get pushed by the second ADs and by the ADs. Yep. I said, their job is to make their day.
Yep.
And I said, case in point, when they're asking you if we're in an office and they need stuff for extras to do, the second AD is going to come up to you and say, give everybody files and coffee cups. Mm-hmm. I want you to come up with other stuff.
Right.
I said, I don't want to come to set and see everybody walking with a shopping bag and a briefcase. I don't want to see everybody in a park sitting there reading a newspaper, kicking a football or kicking a soccer ball and playing hacky sack.
Right.
I said, those are things that boring second ADs who can't think past the end of their nose do. So we'll come up with action. Yep. And I don't want you to tell me, well, the second AD said I had to give him a shopping bag. I'm telling you now, don't give him a shopping bag.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And if you do, make sure there's something in it. Wow.
The other thing I always tell people to watch out for is the ADs who go, props, get off the set, don't worry about it, we're never going to see it.
Yeah.
And I go back to a movie called Drowning Mona. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene where the car is in the driveway and my assistant's putting the front license plate on and the first AD goes, yeah, get out of the set. Don't worry, we're not going to see it. Gotta go. So he didn't put the license plate on. The next day, I have the producer going, Scott, what the fuck? There was no license plate on the car.
Yike.
And he goes, how do you not do that? How do you forget to put the plate on? Because the plate had been every other time, obviously. And I go to speak to my guy, and he goes, well, the AD said we're not going to see it. I go, here's the thing. So now the day finishes. The AD gets congratulations for making his day.
Yeah.
Right.
And we just get scorned
for
not doing the most simple of maneuvers of putting a license
plate on.
So from that point on, you tell the AD, I need to put it on.
Yeah.
Right? Don't tell me we're not going to see it because I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another way to mitigate that is by looking in the freaking monitor. Okay, that's the other thing I have with my crew. It's like, you got to look in the monitor.
Yeah.
Even if the AD says you're not seeing it, if you're looking in the monitor and you're seeing it, then guess what? You're seeing it.
Or you might not see it. You know what? You might not see it in the monitor, and then they change the shot ever so slightly. It's just do it.
Just do it.
We're not talking about putting SWAT gear on 20 guys who might not be seen. We're talking about putting a license plate on, making sure that the sandwich is on the plate, even though they say we're shooting above it, we'll never see it. Just put the sandwich on the plate.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely
if it's a matter of a couple seconds here or there, chances are if you just go ahead and finish putting the plate on,
that's it, and then you're done.
You'll be done, and they still won't be ready to shoot. They're not going to be waiting for you.
Yes. Exactly. Well, and then that's also time management too, right? Make sure you get plates up first.
It's also the comfortability on set of seasoned people.
Right.
That when I'm on set and the people that I bring on set, the ADs respect them. They're not going to pull the stuff that they would pull with a less than seasoned crew.
Right.
We've proven our worth. There's a reason why we're doing the shows that we're doing. And I'm given that respect that the costume designer. It's harder for prop departments to earn that respect.
Yep.
And I think when you earn it, it's something that you should really use wisely.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. That was a fast hour and a half.
Yeah, I know.
Come back next week for part 2.
That's right. We could do it again, and we could keep going. But no, man.
And if you don't like any of the stories that I told, I could change them and make them better.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure you got 1,000 other stories.
I was just saying, there's stuff we didn't get to that I know we'll bring you back at some point. We'll definitely get to it.
For sure. But
thank you so much for joining us. Though.
It was such a pleasure.
Great to
really, really
nice
a lot of
meet
fun.
you.
Yeah, definitely.
Love doing this.
Yeah. All right. So to wrap up the show, I guess submissions are open for the first official MacGuffin Awards, which is the PMG Awards, official award show. It's the only award show that's actually going to highlight the work of property masters.
Amen.
Yeah, I know. Finally. So submissions, we're getting a lot of them in. It's looking really, really good. So make sure you submit. The award show itself is going to be on September 14th, but submissions close on June 10th. So make sure you get them in there and get all your material in. You can submit for the MacGuffin Awards at MacGuffinAwards.com. You can also find it at PMGAwards.com. That'll take you over there. You do not need to be a PMG member to do that. But if you want to be a PMG member, go ahead over to PropertyMastersGuild.org and you can apply to be a member over there.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, we definitely always love to have you. And, I mean, we're getting lots of members, more and more members by the day, so from all over the world. We're accepting applications from everywhere, so come on in. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, brought to you by retired and working prop masters. If this is your first time listening, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment wherever you're hearing this. If you'd like to know more information on the Property Masters Guild or have any questions for us here at Prop Talk, be sure to go to propertymastersguild.org. We're also on Instagram @_the PMG. All other socials. We're also on YouTube now. You can watch us throughout the whole show, see our pretty faces. So go ahead to YouTube. Also, it's the Property Masters Guild, and yeah, I think that's it.
Bam.
That's right.
Take us out, Paul Baker.
Yeah, until next time.